Transportation Committee of the LA City Council. We have 13 agenda items, colleagues, and with your permission, you will note that 4 through 13 are basically having to do with temporary parking, and it's just pretty much routine. Do I have a motion to put them on consent? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So moved by Mr. Parks. The second by Mr. Koretz. So moved. Now we have 3 items before us. Paul, why don't you come over into this chair, whoever that is, bump them. Well, first come, first serve around here. Okay. First, before we go into that, I like to give the public comment its moment. We have 2 public comment cards for general public comment. We have Noel Weiss and Dr. Clyde Williams. Come on up, gentlemen. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You may speak, Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Council Member Rosendahl. Appreciate it. Actually, you know what? I'm here kind of on a treasure hunt. I'm in search of a lost idea. The lost idea that was communicated by you when you first ran about the joined at the hip thing between planning and transportation. I don't know that ever really got implemented or really debated or discussed. I think we need it now more than ever. I think the best marker of that was a couple of years back when there was a parking congestion map from 1987 that planning was using to basically make decisions, and it obviously facilitated the kind of speculation that I think hurt everybody. We need to, I think, basically revisit that. We're talking about, obviously, a situation where, in addition, we have, I think, we should be in a position where anybody on a bike, anywhere in this city, should be able to go from wherever they are to downtown without a problem. That, you know, I know that these plans are in the works, but I think it's a really important issue. New York just passed a law, maybe, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 months ago, that talked about, well, what if you drive your bike to work? Can you park in the building? What if buildings put restrictions on that sort of thing? You have a vacant space in the mall. It's been vacant, what, for a year? You have bike co-ops that can come in and basically provide places where people can. I mean, we need to start promoting some more creative thinking as opposed to just kind of going through the motions. And I want to try to encourage the council to do that. I mean, I welcome elections. Thank God for elections, because it's, you know, one of the prime times where we get some true dialogue going. But there's got to be the execution and the follow-through, and frankly, it just hasn't been there on these transportation issues. What is the transportation policy of the City of LA? Do we know? Have we discussed? Have we debated? That's what I want to try to encourage. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much for your thoughtful comments, and we appreciate that. Dr. Clyde Williams.
Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno, Northeast LA. We're at the LA 32 Neighborhood Council. We are quite interested in corridor studies. However, we're also working with the Northeast Area Neighborhood Council Coalition, which is in its formative period, trying to work out what corridors pass through Northeast LA and how they can be improved. The problem is that there seems to be a lot of different entities involved. We have Bureau of Engineering, we have Department of Transportation, and also the council districts. So what we're concerned about is, and a good example is the San Fernando Road widening. We don't know what's happened to it. It was reviewed environmentally, and we made comments and things went on, but we don't know what's happening. That's connected to the Figueroa Roundabout, and that one's connected to the North Spring Street Bridge or viaduct widening and improvements, which is connected with the cornfields, which is associated with the LA River plan. So what we're trying to do is promote consideration as to San Fernando Road, getting into the bridges at Broadway, Spring, and Main, represent an alternative commuter route for I-5. And we don't see any real corridor studies being done either by LADOT or by Bureau of Engineering once they get it. So we're just confused and specifically wondering what's happening to San Fernando Road and some of the other projects in Northeast LA. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Appreciate it. We've been joined by Mr. Alarcon. Mr. Alarcon, we approved on consent items 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. If you agree with that, then it would be unanimous by the committee.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now we have 3 remaining items, and if my colleagues don't mind, I'd like to go to item 2 first, so that we can address that issue and let the media go about their business and other issues that the city has. Could we please get a report on what the motion is?
Item number 2 is a Rosendahl-Corretz-Garcetti motion relative to shutting down or rerouting traffic to accommodate the presence of the president or high-ranking dignitaries and related matters.
Thank you for that. Could we ask the LAPD and DOT, and I know fire might be in the room as well, to come on up, and let's have a discussion here about best practices and lessons learned. As you all know, when the President of the United States came to Los Angeles, he had an event in Hancock Park, and we know that he flew by chopper over to the VA property in Brentwood, and then from there he went to his event and then went back to the hotel he was staying in. But the first question I have is, what is the procedure and what are the protocols when it comes to the president coming to Los Angeles or a major international dignitary or figure? How do we operate within that world?
Well, let's focus strictly on the president, because it's entirely different if we bring Deputy Chief Rapoli, Los Angeles Police Department, Special Operations Bureau. Councilmember Rosendahl, if I may, I'd like to just focus strictly on the president, because others are entirely different. Well, the president requires full street closures, others don't. The way the process works is this. We get notified, could be anywhere between 2 to 5 days prior to the president visiting the city of Los Angeles by the Secret Service LA office. When that occurs, they set up a date, which is called a police meeting. We then meet with, we have representatives from police, LA City Fire, Department of Transportation. There may be some others depending on the location, okay? Beverly Hills, in this particular case, because where he remained overnight was Beverly Hills, they were there, as well as airport police. We sit down and we listen then to the presidential detail from Washington, D.C., and they set a very loose itinerary of when he will be in town, when he lands, where he will spend the night, where the landing zone site is, if they're going to fly him in, or if they're just going to straight motorcade him in, and then any other locations that he may visit. That's the sense of the police meeting. We then break into smaller groups with our counterparts, and we discuss other details. From there, we develop a plan as to how we're going to support the Secret Service with respect to the president's visit.
Is there any discussion in those discussions about a route that might be less congested, or a suggestion that maybe he takes a chopper, a helicopter from point A to point B? In those initial discussions, 3 to 5 days before the president comes, how forthcoming are you and Department of Transportation and the fire department? With the CHP, I know are involved, plus you mentioned Beverly Hills and the airport police.
We work very, very closely as a team. There's no holding back information. Unfortunately, we do not get specific details until the Secret Service advance team from Washington, D.C. gets into the city, and we sit down and have our first meeting. That's when the details of the visit are explained.
Okay. So when the details were explained on this particular visit, that the president was going to go to Hancock Park around 5 o'clock, or he would land around 5, what kind of, does anybody say, hey, it's the most gridlocked time of the day, how do we go from here to there? Or, I mean, what's the level of our ability to point out our issues and gridlock and all of that?
We're pretty much playing off of the president's time schedule. In this particular case, he made a number of stops. I think if I remember right, I think it was in Wisconsin or Michigan prior to flying out to LA. So for us to say, hey, I think you need to maybe change this because it's really going to impact the city, we're not doing that. We're looking at when he's coming to town. They will tell us when he's going to land, where he's going to land. If they picked out a landing zone site, in this particular case, they did. They flew him from LAX to Barrington Park. They say we need to get him from Barrington Park to Beverly Hills. In this case, it was the Beverly Hilton Hotel. With that being said, we will recommend a route to the Secret Service. They may say, okay, we're good with that route, or no, we want this particular street. We're there for support for them. We're not dictating what we're going to do or how we're going to do it.
Sure. And then when they give that and you suggest a route, then a route is picked, correct?
Yes.
And in this particular case, the route from the Barrington area there, the federal land there, was to go to the Beverly Hilton Hotel
Yes.
for a fresh up before he goes to the event.
Yes.
And what route did you determine was the best route, or did you suggest to them? I know that you can't let the public know at this point.
That's correct. Wilshire Boulevard.
You picked Wilshire
Yes.
because the hotel is at the corner of Wilshire and Santa Monica Boulevard,
Yes.
the Hilton. And that, we felt from our policing standpoint, that Wilshire would have been easier or less congested than, say, for instance, Santa Monica.
Yeah, and I think that the best person to answer that question with respect to streets would be Aaron from Sarkisian from Department of Transportation. That's his expertise.
Aaron,
Yes,
tell
sir.
us how you determined that particular route versus other routes and so on.
Yes, Aram Sahakian with Special Traffic Operations Division, LADOT. Number one, it has to be the most direct route, the most direct route to the destination. But most importantly, we make only a suggestion. We are told that we're going to take Wilshire Boulevard from the landing zone to proceed to the hotel. Now, we study that. We communicate our figures as far as traffic volume and the hours of the day. It's not a secret. We always bring that issue up, that it's between 5 and 6 p.m. The volumes are very high. That is communicated to them. And in turn, the Secret Service will make a determination, and we're told we're sticking to Wilshire Boulevard. There are no other options to make it to the hotel. And in this specific case, honestly, Wilshire was the best option. For us to recommend Santa Monica or Pico or Sunset, it's not the most direct route, and it loops around basically the area, creating more of a gridlock. The signals on Wilshire, they're coordinated, they're all on fiber optics, so our ADSAC center can synchronize them. And we also communicate with MTA to see that during that time of day, what's the least impact on mass transit as far as bus operations. So we take that into consideration also.
So you had two challenges. One, getting him to the hotel, and the second challenge was getting him to Hancock Park to this event.
Correct.
And how did you determine from the hotel to the event what route to take there? And did they listen to your suggestions?
From the hotel to the residence, the most direct route was Olympic Boulevard, obviously. Now, we have done Santa Monica Boulevard in the past, and we had a similar outcry from the community. It's not a secret. It's rush hour traffic time. The impact on Olympic Boulevard is more to businesses versus residents. And we do like to promote detour routes on sections of arterials and majors, basically, that have more of businesses than residentials. Because if we cut off residential streets, people are not getting home whatsoever. Versus Olympic Boulevard being more businesses, the residentials being north and south of it, people have access to their residences, and the time of day, that's when people are going home.
So you suggested Olympic Boulevard in those discussions as a strategy?
I wouldn't say in this instance it was a direct suggestion. We heard the Olympic Boulevard and we nodded.
You like
And that's what we usually do, yes. Yes.
And the drive time from the hotel to the event was how long?
The drive time, now, once we secured the route, Mr. President, first Secret Service would like us to have the route completely secured half hour out. In other words, if the movement from the hotel to the fundraising location is going to begin at 5 o'clock, at 4:30 the route has to be completely secured, completely impounded of vehicles that are parked on the street. The movement itself is no more than 10-15 minutes because the motorcade goes at 35 to 45 miles per hour. They don't stop at any signals. It's just a straight shot. The challenge is, once we shut it down half hour out, and in this instance what we did, Mr. President, is to maintain crossing points on the major highway to take some pressure off, otherwise we will completely gridlock the area. But even those crossing points, and I communicated this to Chief Rupoli, and he was the incident commander at the command post, we try to keep them open as long as we can. We're talking about Robertson and La Brea and what have you, crossing the major highway. But at some point, which was approximately 25 minutes to half hour out, it was a full shutdown. We didn't have a choice. Now, once they got to the fundraising, the challenge there, Mr. President, was to maintain the route closed. And I say that because the event is an hour, 15 minutes long only. For us to reopen the street and shut it down again, we just don't have the luxury and the time to do that. So we reestablish crossing points again, and at some point, we get the call from the command post that the boats will be moving back to the hotel. We shut it down and secure the route.
And what he was referring to, if I may, is a soft closure and a hard closure. Soft closure is where we're letting cross traffic through. Hard closure, we shut everything down. He's absolutely right. We tried in this particular point to shut it down about 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes before the president left the hotel.
Yeah.
Hard closure, and then again once he left the venue site, just because of the traffic issues.
So the first phase from Barrington Park to the hotel, that was secured a half an hour before he takes it, and then when he hit the hotel, that was opened up and never closed again.
Correct.
So then, as he went to the hotel, and then he's going to go to Hancock Park, how much of a distance was that?
Approximately 6 to 7 miles.
6 to 7 miles. So you felt because it was an hour and 15 there, to open and close, soft open and close, could cause more problems, so you kept it closed.
It's impossible to secure it again. Once it takes our teams approximately an hour, 15 minutes to secure the route. So it's impossible to move the equipment and then immediately start shutting down again. Just to clear the streets, Mr. President, it takes a good 20 minutes after the closures are in place to get the people out of the route.
Okay. What are the lessons learned? I know the White House got the message that it was the gridlock time of day. There was a lot of angry constituents. Some of us have anecdotal stories where people were waiting for 2 hours here or 3 hours there. They were very angry. They were very upset. And of course, I say two things to my constituents. One, patience. You have to have patience. And two, it's the security of the President of the United States, and in these troubled times, his security matters. Is there anything else we can do, like to suggest to the President's handlers, folks, don't pick 5 o'clock on the west side of Los Angeles if you expect to have good politics come out of it? I mean, do those kinds of discussions happen at all in the confidence of the group effort about our particular problems of gridlock in our city?
Well, let me answer that. I can tell you this. The LA Office of Secret Service is very sympathetic to the situations that can befall the city with respect to gridlock, community issues, business issues. And we talk about that, and they're very, very sensitive because they're good partners. They know what we experience. That information is pushed up to Washington. I can tell you that. As far as what Washington does with that, because it's kind of a two-pronged approach. There's the President's staff who coordinates the event, meaning there's going to be a fundraiser at this location, on this date, on this time, and he's going to be staying at this location. They hand that information off to the President's details, the U.S. Secret Service detail in Washington, and say, make it happen. That's the process. So I may be speaking out of turn by saying, hey, that information about the concerns of the city are pushed up to his staff. I'm sure there's discussions, but as far as does it really make a difference, I couldn't answer that.
Fire Department, do you want to add anything
Well, what I can
to
add,
the record?
Battalion Chief Michael Bowman, Commander of Public Safety. I was part of the Unified Command, and we plan this to the nth degree, and we leave no stone unturned when we do this type of event, specifically the President of the United States. And, you know, Secret Service from Washington has told us we do it unlike any other city in the United States as far as the coordination and the working relationships we have with the departments in the city of Los Angeles, also with our neighboring departments in counties and the Secret Service. Are we learning from these? Yeah, this is a fourth presidential visit, and yes, we're going to get better and tweak things here and there, and I can see things that come about is for us to reach out to Washington and see if we can get the president to stay in Los Angeles. That'd be one thing that we can do in the right direction. And we're going to really factor this in the Unified Command as far as this transportation issue. So I can say that, yeah, there are a few lessons to be learned, but all in all, I think our Unified Command worked extremely well.
Yeah, no, I've heard nothing good but that. In fact, I've talked to the Secret Service informally too and anecdotally about the cooperation here. I'm just wondering who makes the final button push as to the time and the location. That comes from the president's handlers.
Yes.
And what we do as a city is coordinate the best effort we can for obviously flow of traffic and for the safety of our president.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, that's just my set of questions, and I know I have three colleagues here that might want to add to it. Mr. Kurtz, who's also on the west side and tremendously impacted by this.
Yes, my district particularly, as was Bill's, was heavily impacted. And I think it's a real problem, and I'd like to see some way to address it better than we did this last time. It's nothing new. Presidents and vice presidents have been visiting LA for a long time. I actually drove in a vice presidential motorcade as far back as 1976 on one of Walter Mondale's visits as a vice presidential candidate, and actually saw the 10 freeway completely shut down with no cars on it except for a motorcade, and people at every on-ramp shaking their fists at us, just as mad as they were this time. There are a lot of questions. Our constituents thought it was completely unplanned. There was no warning to them at all that there would be any kind of a problem, and yet people were tied up for hours. I had staff people that were tied up. I had people walking home from miles away because they had no way to get anywhere. More importantly, I wonder about public safety issues. If somebody had a baby that was about to be delivered, well, they'd be delivering their own baby. They had no way to get to the hospital. They had no way to get out. What did we do to, first of all, to plan for public safety emergencies with this many-hour tie-up? You know, if someone had a baby to deliver, what would happen? If someone had a heart attack, what happened if you were in the wrong place at the right time?
Well, we work closely, sir, with the LA City Fire Department and look at those types of situations. That's one thing, quite frankly, we could do a little better on, is coordinating those types of response to make sure that we're working with fire departments, OCD. They're very self-contained. We have these large events so that they're making sure that their rescue ambulances know that this particular street's going to be shut down and it's going to impact a particular area, so that when those rescue ambulances are dispatched, they know that they're going to run into a particular problem in a particular area, and then they can reroute their response to the hospital or to the victim that needs assistance.
Well, since traffic couldn't move at all, how would they get anywhere?
Well, there was ambulances that were running. As a matter of fact, they did pick up a heart attack victim.
Well, yes, we did have emergency response with one of our LA City ambulances, and they were able to go through the line through communication up to the Unified Command. And like I said, there's things that we're going to improve on this, and one of them is that communication, as Chief Rapoli indicated, is having these planned access routes to our dispatch centers, so that can be included in the initial information to our emergency responders on the ground.
And Councilman, one more thing, if I'm not mistaken, Chief Bowman, they stage response units accordingly north and south of the route, so they don't have to cross the route.
That is correct.
Now, how long was this traffic actually tied up? Because I heard numbers between 3 and 5 hours. At its worst, how long could somebody have been stuck in traffic?
The first leg, Councilman, from the landing zone to the hotel was approximately 2.5 hours. The second leg was more 3.5 to 4 hours.
So those were each tie-ups that then there was a break between the two, or were those two together?
Well, the first leg was from the landing zone to the hotel, about approximately half an hour to 45 minutes at the hotel. Then the second movement was from the hotel via Olympic Boulevard to the fundraiser. So it's a small gap in between.
And how much of a say does LA have in this? I mean, if this is going to tie up traffic in a large section of the city for 3 or 4 hours, are we stuck closing off all these streets, or can we say, look, we're only willing to tie up traffic and endanger our public safety to some degree, so we're going to give you one street, but that's what you have to use. You don't get 2 or 3, or how many were actually tied up.
No, we tie up one major, in this particular case, when you're referring to Olympic, we shut that down. That's the one street. Cross traffic, when he moves, we shut it down. I don't think it would be a good idea to tell the Secret Service, you're only going to have one street, everything else is open. We'd be setting ourselves up, I think, for disaster. If something went sideways, we'd be standing before some Senate subcommittee trying to explain why we did what we did and why we skimped on safety. I really don't think that'd be a good idea.
Well, how do we avoid this kind of situation? How do we let our traffic be tied up for 4 hours?
Well, the issue with this one, why this one was the aberration, and we've had 4 presidential visits since President Obama has been president, and 2 or 3 with the vice president coming to town. Was it tie up traffic? Yes. Was this one extreme? Absolutely. It was extreme because we went from the Beverly Hilton to Hancock Park, which was a 6.3-mile run, and we had to hold it until he went back. That exasperated the entire issue, and that's why that's why we're here talking about it. We talked to the Secret Service. You know, unfortunately, we can make recommendations and suggestions, but we can't control where he stays and where his event is. Believe me, like Councilmember Rosendahl said, they're well aware of what's going on now, the situation that has taken hold of the city, and I can tell you they're aware.
This will
They're
be
well aware.
very high on everyone's radar screen the next time the president visits Los Angeles.
I mean, I would think at some point we just have to be willing to say, no, we're going to do this and that, but you can't schedule something in such a way that we're going to have our street shut down for 3 or 4 hours. The answer just has to be no. So you want to do a fundraiser? I mean, I have no doubt that it would have been just as inexpensive for us, although you obviously can't do it, to just say, here, the city of Los Angeles will pay the $500,000 that you raised at this fundraising event. It'll cost us less and we won't inconvenience our residents. Obviously, you can't do that, but at some point, we have to have some control, because they can't set aside the traffic without us. We have to cooperate, and I would hope we have some ability to have some pushback and just say, I know you want to schedule it this way, but you just can't.
Well, hearing that, obviously, and my other 2 colleagues can speak, it was very clear to everyone involved in this that the timing and the route and the reality was just too much for Los Angeles. As gridlocked as we are and as patient as we can be, we ran out of patience on this one. So one would assume that going forward, they'll think of a route that is less problematic or as long as this one was, or they'll come up with another strategy. I mean, do you feel comfortable enough that they got our message and that they'll work with us in those contexts going forward?
Well, I'm sure they got the message. We had a meeting today with them on another issue, and I mean that came up. That was the beginning of the conversation, and they're aware it's pushed all the way up to Washington. So we'll see what happens next time, and I know there's going to be a next time.
Mr. President, let me put it this way. Your motion will go a long way.
We'll go a long way.
Yeah.
How so?
They will listen. And they will listen, and they've listened to us in the past. They want to be cooperative. We don't have any resistance from them, but they have their own reasons. They have intelligence. The routes are based on intelligence. Those are things that we cannot involve in. But they are very mindful of the community, the traffic issues, and what have you.
And the public is not given information on the route because of the obvious security.
Correct.
Yes, that's correct.
So that's why the best we can do is let them know the president is coming and realize that it might cause some disruptions, because you can't say he'll go this route or that route or anything like that.
That's correct.
And even the council offices, as I understand it, weren't really notified that we were going to have this kind of traffic tie-up.
You're absolutely right. And what happened at one time, I don't remember which council office it was, and I don't want to embarrass anyone on, before me, if it was yours, and I don't think it was, but that happened. And it was a email blast that went out to constituents, and within 2 minutes, the Secret Service was making phone calls saying, what the heck are you guys doing?
That was the mayor's office, Chief.
At the mayor's office? Okay.
Well, I might say when President Bush was here and went up to Sunset Boulevard, for about a month, I got tremendous anger from my constituents because Sunset is only one way in and one way out, and that became very problematic for the folks.
Well, if you remember, council member, I was the bureau chief out there when that happened.
That's right.
And that was something I tried working with the Secret Service about, let's do a rolling closure, and they're absolutely against that. There was issues with the rolling closure, not as safe. And I know Aram has some problems with that as too. It can't move as quickly. It's still going to tie up traffic, and that just didn't work out.
Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Park.
Yes, I would just like to ask that you send a message that if the president would like to visit Pacoima, Panorama City, Sylmar, that they're absolutely welcome, and we have the highest degree of confidence in the LAPD, Fire Department, and DOT with regard to their handling of whether it's a pope, a president, or any number of dignitaries that I've had the experience to observe you manage. We absolutely rely on these visits. It's not just about celebrity. It's about economic benefit to the people of Los Angeles. When the president comes, policy comes with him, and it helps Los Angeles. So if there are parts of the city that don't want to be troubled with it, bring them to Hanson Dam, and we'll be happy to make the accommodations. And the people of the Northeast San Fernando Valley and the vast majority of Los Angeles would welcome the president to their community and put up with the problems. I have had the opportunity to just be a constituent and witness, President Reagan or the Pope drive by, and even though I never voted for the man, I was very pleased to wave at the President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, when he drove by the place where I worked. And so I think I know that the strategic planning of your departments is constant, and it involves continuous improvement. I'm absolutely confident that you are conveying to the Secret Service and the other entities involved your best efforts to improve the situation as we move forward. And frankly, I think that we should be appreciative to have the president here, notwithstanding all the trouble, and also appreciative for the tremendous job that you do. Not to say that we shouldn't check it every once in a while and do everything we can to improve upon it. But I have to say, knowing the way emergency operations works in the city of Los Angeles, I know you're doing just that. And so I have every confidence in you, and thank you for doing. In fact, I believe you mitigated the situation. If anything, it would have been worse if not for the amazing talent that we have in the services that we bring to bear when a president or somebody of that equivalence comes to town. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alarcon, for that. Mr. Parks?
Rich, I just want you to go to that next meeting and say no.
As long as it's after September 30th.
No, let me just say this. I think this has been at least a 50 or 60-year evolution of the operation that you are now in charge of, getting to the point that it's probably is fine-tuned and it just gets better. But I think, as people that are not familiar with it, you can make all the suggestions that you want to Secret Service. The White House dictates, and they will listen. And the next time they want to have 3 events in one day, they'll have 3 events in one day. And if you say don't go on what street, that does not impair them as the president. They block off the whole airspace in the city of LA to land. So that should give us an indication of what impact it makes when he gets off the plane and 18 trucks follow him, an ambulance and all that other stuff. So these are things that it's just part of the business. And it's probably one of the most refined things that we do operationally. And I think that when the president comes, you can't go out and tell people he's on Slauson in the freeway at 12. This is why the issues that we're confronted with. And I think what we have to be sensitive to, although we can think about traffic and we can think about a lot of things, there's only one real mission. It's the president comes here alive and he leaves here alive. That's the only mission that we have. And so if people are inconvenienced or time, that's part of the business of having a president. And so thank you for what you do. And as your replacement comes in and you train him or her, that same kind of issues will go on. And again, as we all know, you can tell them and explain to them, but when they give you the schedule, that's what occurs. And nobody wants to be sitting there discussing, as you said, at the congressional hearing as to how you lost the president. So it's priority. It's a higher priority than somebody sitting at a light or being inconvenienced.
No, you're absolutely right, and that is our charge, that's our mission, is get him here safely and get him out safely.
Exactly.
Bottom
You
line.
only have one mission.
Thank you, Mr. Parks, for that. Former police chief, so he's obviously coming in with the gravitas of 30 years of experience plus with the police department. But what I found intriguing was when you said there are lessons learned and that there have been lessons that the White House has learned. If I could, before I give it back to Mr. Koretz, you heard Mr. Koretz's frustration similar to mine in terms of our constituent base. Now that they got the message, what do you think will happen, or what can you speculate in your own sense of this coordination, cooperation, that will make it less of a stressful situation like it was just a month ago? Just go, all three.
I've been around a long time, and I've learned not to speculate on these types of things.
Yeah.
Like Aram said, they heard, they're aware. I think what we see is the proof will be in the pudding, what happens next time the president arrives. And he's the only one we shut the streets down for. There's no one else
Nobody else can.
that comes into the city of Los Angeles that we do hard closures for, other than the President of the United States.
Well, the president will know because he'll be coming back again before the November election, at least once, I would assume, and maybe even more between now and then. But more importantly, not just the president, but others of stature come to the West Side. There are a lot of deep pockets there, Republicans and Democrats and independents. So there is always the fundraising reality that goes on the West Side that has to be dealt with. Mr. Koretz.
Yeah, and I don't want to be overly critical or more critical than my colleagues, but I've sort of grown up in the 5th Council District watching presidents come and go. Most of them spent a lot of time at the Century Plaza. Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, some of them jokingly called it their Western White House. They made a lot of trips there. When I was on the West Hollywood City Council, we had Bill Clinton at the House of Blues on Sunset Boulevard. I never saw traffic tie up like this during the Obama administration. And I don't want to sound like a Tea Party here. In fact, with some irony, I was among the first handful of elected officials that supported Barack Obama when he first started running. But I think his people still need to be sensitive to our traffic problems and the fact that I don't think they handled this as well as some of the previous presidents. And yes, our only priority goal is to make sure that he comes and goes safely. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't have done that with an hour of traffic tie-up rather than 4 hours if his scheduling people and everyone else in his administration and everyone worked together to be more sensitive to the trouble it would cause. And I hope that they really are getting that message, because I think half the problem could be handled with some better scheduling and some better planning of the locations, and we could never hear from this issue again, which would be the ideal. I'm hoping that we have Mr. Obama in office for another 6 years, and I'd like to go for those 6 years without another massive traffic tie-up like this.
Okay, just taking that point as a concluding point, is there a liaison in the White House other than the Secret Service liaison, a political liaison that interfaces with you?
Not with the police department, no.
Not with any of the three of you? Because historically, I know under President Clinton, he had a gentleman that was the special California guy, and he made sure that the White House was sensitive to California and especially to L.A. Issues. One of my suggestions is if you all could, in your next conversation with Secret Service, find out who the civilian liaison is for California for the president, that internally in the White House helps the president make the decisions and the locations and the timing, and not put it in a policing sense. That's obviously number one priority, as my colleagues were saying. But I think political astuteness needs to also be one of the techniques, one of the realities that White House has. So I look forward to hearing back who will be the California contact point in the White House. And if I need to call the president's office, I'll call him myself. I was an early supporter of his, too, way back when. But more importantly, his safety matters and our community matters at the same time. So if we can get that going, I think that would be helpful, the politics of a person who appreciates what we're going here. Now they know from this experience that 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock on the west side is a very difficult time frame for all of us, and that if they're going to do it, they're going to have to figure a way to jumpstart it or move it in a way that doesn't tie up the streets for 4 or 5 hours. Anything else anybody wants to add? No. At this point, colleagues? Okay. Well, thank you for the report. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to go to item number 1.
Item number 1 is Rosendahl-Labange motion relative to instructing the city's 2011 Metro Call for Projects applications.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Ken Husting with LADOT.
All right, Ken, how much money are we going for?
Well,
Let's go to the bottom line.
bottom line, Metro staff is telling us 100 million countywide.
100 million countywide.
That's
nothing.
No, that's about a fourth of what we normally do as far as the call for projects.
Why do we think that's the case? Why are they saying only 100?
There's just not enough money out there. They're not getting money from the state. So this is about all they have. As a matter of fact, normally money is available within just a few years. I believe the money is not available until fiscal year 16-17. So it's there's very little money available, and it is far out.
Dr. Clyde Williams, you filled out a card. You want to make a few comments right now or wait? Going once, going twice, Dr. Clyde Williams. You going to speak on this one or not? Come on up.
Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno, Northeast LA. We're also looking at transportation. The real problem here is that recently we only got $1 million from MTA a while ago, supposedly to do a CD14 job in El Sereno, and then they de-obligated it because nothing was moving on this side. So we're somewhat concerned. $100 million sounds like a lot to us, but I know for LA, it's not. How about Tiger 2? How about Tiger 1? One of our concerns is that we don't know when things come due. Now, the application is supposed to be coming next month. Well, what date, what time, what's needed, so that the neighborhood councils and others could support projects. We can support. The Tiger 2 project was supported, one of them was supported by NRDC. And I said, well, how about if you get Sierra Club support also? Does that count more for $100 million? Would hope so. So what we're concerned about is timely notification, and will the neighborhood councils be involved in any manner so that we can make meaningful input to the process? That's all.
Thank you very much for that. If I could just cue off of that particular point about neighborhood councils and involvement in the community. We have $100 million, and this is $100 million for the county-wide.
Yes.
And when we look at us being 40% of the county, do we in our own mind think that's possible that we could get 40?
I think we strive to at least get 40. We don't always reach that number. Sometimes it's as low as what?
Historically, on average, we've received about 25% of the pot.
Your name for the record?
Arsene Mangasarian from LIDOT.
So it can range anywhere from the 20s all the way up to the 40s. It's a hit and miss.
What about the point that he made about neighborhood councils getting involved in other community groups, helping us percolate up what we would want to do? Do we do that?
And what we do is we do look to the council offices, for the council offices to interact closely with the neighborhood councils to solicit their ideas and then bring it back to the interagency or the interdepartmental committee. And then the department staff looks at each project and ranks them and sees the feasibility. There's just no way for the department staff to be able to work with every single neighborhood council. So we do look to the council office.
So it's the responsibility of the 15 of us to come up with what we think makes the most sense and to get that process any way we think we can best do it.
Yes.
Okay. So 40 to maybe more million. When do we have to know what we'll get and what projects we have to submit? What's the schedule of events now?
On November 16, MTA will introduce their final draft of the application. So by November 15, we'll know everything but the funding marks. Funding marks, normally MTA keeps those for after they see the projects. Funding marks would probably come out in spring of 2011.
So in the spring of 2011, when do we have to get our act together as a city to determine which projects we really care about, and when will we have that deadline internally?
We've already started it, Councilmember. You know, we're having our first task force meeting on Friday, this Friday. Task force meeting is from staff from council offices, CLA, CAO, and the departments that wish to participate in the next call. We sit down and we talk about it, and we decide first thing we're going to approve the process. The task force is going to approve the process. How do we go about doing this business? And then after that, we will select subcommittee members to evaluate the projects. You know, we'll bring the projects out and they will evaluate them, and then after that, you know, we will meet with each council office individually and the mayor's office, and we'll go from there.
Tentatively, the applications are due in January 2011. So we're looking at getting the project list to City Council sometime in the weeks before the actual deadline.
I see. Jim, you're in the room. Were you here for this? Okay.
Actually, we've started the process about a month earlier this time.
Okay, colleagues, Mr. Alacon.
Yeah, with regard to the neighborhood councils, the department was directed at some point to build a relationship with the neighborhood councils, something akin to the DWP's memorandum of understanding, and they were supposed to assign a liaison to the neighborhood councils. So I'm trying to square that with your response, that you're going to work through the council offices and not through the department's liaison. And has the memorandum of understanding with the neighborhood councils ever been created?
You know, I honestly am not the one to speak on that. I would have to defer that to the assistant general managers, but I do not believe it has been.
Is the assistant general manager present?
Mr. Fisher.
I mean, I don't...
Previously, with the call for projects, the neighborhood councils have worked closely with the council offices to filter their ideas.
I understand previously, 17 years worth. But we had, in the Neighborhood Council Committee, when I was chair, we had directed the Department of Transportation to establish a closer relationship with the neighborhood councils, including the potential development of a memorandum of understanding. So my question was very specific. Did we establish the memorandum of understanding?
No, we didn't. I'm John Fisher, Assistant General Manager.
Have we assigned a liaison to the neighborhood council?
Up through last year, our General Manager, Rita Robinson, had attended several meetings with a consortium of neighborhood councils, and we had a council liaison working with her. And towards the latter part of 2009, Rita confessed to them that she doesn't know what type of department we're going to have in the new fiscal year, and that it would be hard to make hard commitments as to our activities with the neighborhood councils, not knowing what type of a department we are going to have. So there was the pledge to continue to work with them, but not with the draft memorandum of understanding that had been developed. That was developed with an understanding of certain staff resources and certain people being available. And since that time also, our council liaison retired and is no longer available.
So, so there's going to be more. There's going to be a disconnect with the neighborhood council system. I mean, I'm curious.
No, we also discussed how can we make our information available to them so that they can be aware of the activities we're undertaking. So we put a lot of our information on our website.
Right.
We've been working in coordination with the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment to see how we can make information available. So
how can we improve upon the the initial response here? I mean, so a better response might include informing them about this this process and asking them for suggestions by utilizing the web.
Well, I think, you know, one of the times to consider these projects is not just the few months before the projects are due, but it needs to be an ongoing process. We have this call every other year. During that time, that would be the time when we should be getting ideas, whether they come to us informally through a neighborhood council representative, whether they come to us from the council office, whether we develop them in-house, whether we develop them in consultation with other departments. We need to be developing these projects and evaluating these projects on an ongoing basis so that by the time it's the deadline to apply to the MTA for the monies for these projects, they're well developed, they're vetted, they're thought through, they're considered.
Yeah, I guess I just want to make sure that if a good idea emerges, I don't care where it comes from. And I mean, why should they go through their council member to present a good idea? If it's a good idea, it's a good idea, and if it's a good idea, the council member will probably embrace it. But that relationship doesn't have to be indirect, and it doesn't have to go through the council. I would have liked to have seen a better response with regard to getting the neighborhood councils involved in this process, because these are some of these projects are micro. I mean, they're very tiny, and the council members aren't necessarily going to spot them as much as a neighborhood council, you know, chair of the planning committee or something. They might just automatically say, whoa, we got to do something about that traffic signal situation over here. Or if we get an idea from the Secret Service on how to improve transportation on the west side. I mean, it doesn't matter where the idea comes from, but certainly we have to pay more respect to the neighborhood council system to find ways to bring them into a position to make some good suggestions here. And if you're already informing them through the web, then at a minimum we should communicate with them on the web that this we're in position now to accept these kinds of projects, give them the general criteria, and see if some ideas bubble up. I don't expect 90 different ideas. But you might
And I
get 4 or
believe
5
maybe we
that-
could take the tentative list of projects we had from before that didn't make the cut, plus any other projects that are being submitted, and work with the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment to make sure that that information is available to the various neighborhood councils. So at
Yeah,
least they are
basically
aware
the
of
same
pro-
thing you do with council members. Just kind of divided by 90 or something.
I know one concern in the past had been projects that had been suggested by neighborhood councils were not necessarily in line with the council office's request. For instance, the council office may be aware of a longer-term improvement to a certain corridor, and something that may be coming from the neighborhood council would be contrary to the long-term desire. And I think that was part of the benefit of having the ideas go through the council office, just so that the council office is able to filter what is feasible and what is consistent with the long-term good of the district.
I believe me, as a council member, I can respect that. All I'm saying is, they don't need to go through the council member to present a good idea. And if we can, and the idea was for DOT to have a direct relationship with the neighborhood council system, and it seems that we're working in reverse.
We'll evaluate how we can go ahead and make this a little bit more open to the neighborhood councils and try to solicit input.
Taking that point before Mr. Park speaks, every other year we have the call for projects. And we had a lot of projects in the last call that didn't make the cut. How many of them are back in play on this moment in time?
Right now, we're taking everything that didn't make the cut from last time, and we're going to present it to the council offices, and again, see if this is still a priority for the council office, if there's been any change as far as, have some projects been funded? Do we know if there's any different plans for a certain corridor? And we'll go from there. But we are taking all the projects that were not funded, and we're starting with those as a base.
Will you publish that shortly so that all council offices and us as a committee can take a look at what is on the plate?
We
On Friday.
We will make that available on Friday at the Interdepartmental Task Force, as well as we will be visiting with each council office to show them a hard copy of and present them with a hard copy of that list of projects that we have to date.
Okay, that's really great. And what I'd like is in our next meeting for you to give us officially a list of what they may be, so that we can clearly, in our own ways, get the message out to people in our community, people in our neighborhood councils and others. We ourselves can look at what seems to be the cutoff list from the last time and where we need to build. The sooner we get that information, the more empowered we can empower our communities on these issues.
Something I'd like to bring up to for consideration of the committee is, in the past, we have had the Community Redevelopment Agency using Prop C funds to go ahead and provide the local match, and then they have their own money coming in, and then they would take their own money and use it as an overmatch. Sort of the privilege that I guess LAWA and Port of LA would be able to have too. In light of the Prop C funding being at record lows and showing deficits for coming years, we're hoping that agencies that bring in their own money, such as Port of LA, LAWA, and CRA, actually use their money to provide the local match and leave Prop C for the departments that don't have that ability, which would be, for instance, Department of Public Works, DOT, planning, and so forth. So I was hoping that Transportation Committee would consider that recommendation.
That's a very interesting recommendation. I obviously want to empower us to be able to do that. Do we need a motion and run it through the process?
I would have to defer to CLA if that's...
If the committee supports that idea, then we could amend you have the motion before you to include that recommendation. And then when this goes to council, I think since the project list that you were just talking about, that's already out there, so the department can present that to council when this goes, if you want to do it that way, and then it would be public and all the council offices would know about it.
Well, it's the first we're hearing of it. Colleagues, does anybody have an opinion on that? We want to amend what we're doing here to do that?
I think we've discussed this in the past, and one of the things that we haven't done is to clarify all of the funds that are available. And one of the things that we've brought up over and over again is that there are districts in the city that have significant traffic mitigation funds.
That's true.
They do not get incorporated in the suggestions as to what should be fixed or not fixed, and yet many times their allocation of Prop C money is greater than those who do not have mitigation money or Prop C money. And so I think we need to look at all the sources of funds to see how they can be leveraged and determine is there fairness throughout the city of LA. So if there is mitigation money there, if there is Prop C money, if there's money from the proprietaries, all that should be on the table to decide which projects have the best means of getting through the system and also to eventually getting finished, but also what gives us the most viable way to compete at the MTA.
Good point.
So that's something we brought up before, but we keep this money in pockets, and you know, one of the things, and I think we brought up to you, Mr. Fisher's heard me say this before, I think we spent $100 million on Santa Monica Boulevard, and none of it was mitigation funds from that area. It all was Prop C and other kinds of money that if we had used some of those funds, you could spread it in a larger sense into the rest of the city. So I think we need to look at all money that's available and how it can be leveraged and how there's a balance and fairness throughout the city.
I know in the last call for projects, we did look into different mitigation funds, and we try to use that money as local match. Could we do a better job? Possibly. But I know that we have at least started doing that in the recent call. But that's a very valid point.
That would be very helpful to all of us.
Anything else, Mr. Parks, at this point?
No. Let me just ask so I'm clear. This is the call for projects for MTA.
Yes.
Okay, where is Safety Lou gone forever, or where is that?
Safety. We have the Safety Lou money that was already appropriated.
That we've already gotten?
Yeah, that we've already gotten. The future, they're waiting for the reauthorization, and probably even the mayor's office could speak more on this, but I know that they're waiting for the reauthorization, and that is, it could be a year away, could be a couple years away.
Is it on the schedule of like every 2 years also?
No, that's on schedule, I believe, of every 4 to 6 years.
6 years, okay.
Yeah. And typically, it does take a while for it to get reauthorized. There's compromise between House and the Senate, as well as the President.
Richard?
When you talk about the local match and using all these different departments, you mentioned the airport, harbor, DWP, and CRA. They all have geographic strings attached to them, except for the DWP, but they still have strings attached.
Yeah.
So would your call for projects, would your response be driven by those geographies where you find money? So, for example, if you use CRA money from the 7th Council District, would you then be looking for recommending projects from the 7th Council District? Because you can't use that money to create projects someplace else.
Yes. If the CRA money is allocated to certain areas, we would ask that the CRA use the money that's allocated to that area to provide the local match for that project. So we understand that, for instance, Port of LA and LAWA, they are confined areas, and matter of fact, they never do use Prop C. They always use their own money. The difference is that CRA takes the Prop C and then has their own money on top of that, and so they overmatch, and that essentially gives them an advantage over the rest of the city departments because they're able to provide this overmatch. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to level the playing field as well as reduce the burden on Prop C. And so that the Prop C is just being used by the departments that are not able to bring this additional money.
Okay, but I think Mr. Park's point about past usage of Prop C relying on or not necessarily being equitably spread, and now you're asking to tie up money that is geographically inclined so that you can use Prop C money in those areas. The question is, why wasn't the money used in those areas before? Talking about C money.
Prop C, well, the Prop C money is citywide.
Well, I know, but it's not equitably distributed.
No, it's based on wherever we get money available through different funding sources, for instance, the call for projects, Safety Lou, and other grants. You know, we use the Prop C money as the local match.
Mr. Correct.
Let me just say one thing, and I think Richard hit on the point, is that, you know, there's got to be balance in the sense of Prop C. And on the other hand, we have to also understand that there are CRA areas that do not create a ton of money. So you don't want to punish a district with minimum CRA and little Prop C money and no mitigation money. And then you look at the final pie and you keep seeing other districts getting project after project. And then when I first got here, what they were telling us was the reason, in fact, we called it the donut hole south of the Santa Monica Freeway, because you couldn't find a project south of the Santa Monica Freeway. And then the story was there are no studies that basically prepare these projects to be submitted. And you say, well, we have no studies, no CRA money, and no mitigation money, and then Prop C money is going other way. You'll never have a project in certain areas. So something's got to give to create the balance. Okay, so if we don't have any studies, where do the projects come from?
Yeah.
You have no mitigation money. You know, so this is what we hope you can lay it all on the table and find the equitable balance.
Yeah. Well, perhaps an equitable balance is maybe if there is other funds available to cover the local match, then that should be used. In the event there is no additional money that's available to provide local match, then perhaps it goes back to the standard practice, which has been using Prop C.
I think you got to look at it, because at the end of the day, if you go back a number of years, you'll see an over-concentration of projects in certain parts.
And that's true.
And so the haves keep having, and the have-nots keep not having.
Yeah.
So that's what we're asking on that balance.
And I think that really does stress the importance of working with the council offices that, you know, perhaps have not received as much funding in the past, to be able to try and find projects that are worthy and, you know, they're long overdue, and try to get the money.
That's what we ask.
I appreciate that energy, because that is important. And you were asking for us to do what 10 minutes ago?
Specifically was to have proprietary departments, for instance, Port of LA, LAWA, and CRA, if they have the funds available, the matching funds available within their department, to be able to use the matching funds as opposed to using Prop C. Because Prop C is overburdened, and then those departments, when they do have additional funds available, they typically use those funds as an overmatch.
Yeah.
And that gives them a competitive advantage over all the other city departments.
Well, saying that, then I'd like to make that as a motion on this report, that your suggestion become part of the process going forward. Do I have a second for that?
Well, we can't direct them.
No.
We can.
Yeah, we can suggest.
I mean, I don't think there's anything that stops you from doing that anyway.
You prefer a
I
little
think
bit
they're
more-
looking for some policy guidance of whether when they meet with the interdepartmental group that they can,
Encourage you.
You can encourage us.
Yeah.
That'll probably be good enough.
and we'll highlight that in the reports when we come back with the list.
But being that you kind of hold the strings of Prop C, you have some, I mean, in the sense of how viable the project and what money's available is part of that discussion.
Yeah.
So you can look at that and say.
Yes, we can.
If Harbor has money, we're not going to spend Prop C.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, so you have that.
We do have that ability.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's take that as the spirit of where we're going. If any of these proprietary departments try to use their money and this money to do their match, get back to us on that, because obviously that does give an advantage over other issues, and frankly, maybe over more important priorities for the overall city.
So the
I
action
think
would
that's
be
fair.
to amend the report to encourage the department to seek other sources of local match.
I think that's fair. That's good.
Very good.
That
Good
should be enough.
compromise.
Okay. So moved, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maria, the next item left.
Item 3 is the DOT report relative to the status of the on-street car share pilot program.
Okay, we do have one public comment on this, Len, and I want to say Vanishelba? Not too bad. Go for it.
Not bad at all. My name is Lev Vanschelbaum. I'm with USC Transportation, and I'm here to just mention briefly our program that we have with Zipcar. It's been hugely successful. We've had the program for about 3 years. It started with 6 cars. We now have over 20. Students love it. There you go. I have one.
From Alex's favorite.
I have one in my office as well. So it's been great success at USC, and we're looking forward to working with Zipcar to continue the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your positive comment. Please. Amir.
Good afternoon. Amir Sadati, Assistant General Manager, LA Department of Transportation. Thank you for your patience, and this is the last item, so I'll try to be concise. This is a year-end status report, and I believe we have about 6 recommendations before the committee. We were before you a few months ago as the pilot results were coming in. We wanted to tell you how the program that launched next to USC and UCLA was going, and you know it has been very successful. The utilization rate's been high. Since then, we did a survey, and the survey came back with about 91% of the car share users being more of the university students or the faculty. So before we wanted to extend the program to other areas, I think it was important to distinguish that we wanted to look at a non-university setting and substantiate some of the viability and success of the program before we went to other areas. So we looked at the letter of agreement that we had with Zipcar, and we consulted with the city attorney, and it was feasible for us to be able to expand upon the pool of vehicles that we had within the letter of the agreement. That particular agreement between us and Zipcar had ability to go up to 40 total vehicles. And currently we're using 18 of the spaces at UCLA and USC combined. So there was a pool of approximately 22 vehicles or locations that could be used. And our report to you will ask that we extend the pilot, continue the pilot at UCLA and USC locations, but also extend it into the Hollywood, working with Council President Garcetti and his staff and the Zipcar. We feel that that would be a good location for the extended pilot period for 12 months and be able to come back in about 180 days to report back to this committee with our continued results of the UCLA USC program as well as the new Hollywood program. But I think as our report mentions that we still are looking in parallel working with the Planning Department of Planning and looking at how the Planning Department will incorporate car share philosophy and programs in their specific plan, in their mitigation measures, continue to work with MTA as a multimodal approach to this, having cars available at transit stations so people can make those emergency trips when they use mass transit, continue working with on and off street as well, because off street has a good component, and you know DOT has a lot of lots and private public lots as well as private lots. So those are all the next steps. We think we can come back and have this program running by November 1 in Hollywood, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I know Zipcar's here. They flew somebody from Zipcar, and also Councilmember Garcetti's staff are here, but we have about 6 recommendations before you, and we ask that you approve them.
Yeah, rather quickly on this, I know that the university town areas are very, very positive toward it because, you know, the students are moving around. You picked Hollywood, I'm told, also in part because you do have a subway connection there, so it can kind of tie in. Were there other reasons why Hollywood was picked over randomly, let's say, Venice Beach?
Actually, also talking to Zipcar, and Zipcar had looked at some other locations. So in order to, I think, make a viable location that would fit the multi-mode, we picked Hollywood for the following reasons. The density is there as far as both the mixed use, the transit stations are there. And so yes, Venice was on the list. I think a few other locations were on the list, but having worked with Zipcar, we worked together with Council President Garcetti's staff, and we came up with Hollywood.
Is Zipcar here? Come on up. Give us an update from your perspective on the two locations, the pilot, where we're at, and where you see this
Taking us and Hollywood, now adding it to the list by November 1st.
Well, in the, Dan Grossman, Regional Vice President for Zipcar for the West. In your report, there's a status report on the universities. To bottom line, utilization has achieved optimum levels, and in working with, the city, we've determined that it's definitely worthwhile to continue the pilot. As you point out, the university is a great program. We've extended it to street locations outside universities, and it's highly likely that we have a lot of non-university members joining. So the next progression, in a natural evolution, is to try, a city. Now, Hollywood is, depending on how you look at the map, is somewhat in the middle between USC and UCLA. So we believe it's an ideal opportunity to really test the waters. Of course, we want to keep it near transit. We want to have appropriate density. It's vital that we continue our partnership with the city to make this, to see a positive outcome, and to hopefully at the end of the year, if we extend the pilot, the city will be in an ideal position to know exactly what it wants in terms of, a real next step in terms of what car share is going to look like in Los Angeles.
How many folks have signed up part of Zipcar now?
Let me look in the report you have. If you go to, in July, these are the non-universities, so the street locations of 322, utilizing 18 total vehicles.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's all I have.
Let me just ask, are you just looking for extend the pilot to a non-university location, or, because I was just wondering why you didn't think about going to Loyola or Cal State LA, or is it just looking for another setting?
Yeah, that's a great question. The university itself is unique. That is, we look at the university could still potentially grow and grow beyond, where they are now. That's separate from the on-street program. If Los Angeles is serious about growing car sharing, this is, in my opinion, where they're really going to learn a lot.
So it's just a matter of extending options.
Exactly.
And if I may further add on that, Councilmember, that, it's about changing behavior as well. So if we're trying to provide better options and make it more convenient for people to either leave their cars behind or not purchase cars or get rid of their cars, then in a non-university setting, we want professionals, employers, residents, people to be able to have the ability to make that emergency trip to the dentist or short trips via a tool of an $8 per hour option. So it is about changing behavior and having more of a change in the way we think and perceive about parking and driving our cars. And also, just to quickly wrap up, there were some challenges early on with the program, with the parking, non-car share parkers parking in those spaces. So we've worked with enforcement, and we've worked with Zipcar. We've provided some additional information to them on the surrounding streets and what the restrictions are, so that if a person comes and happens to park it in a peak hour zone or a street cleaning day, that they would have that access and they would, move that. So things have gotten a lot better on that aspect of the whole challenges with the ticketing and towing. Unfortunately, there has been some ticketing and towing areas where there is dense population. Parking is in high demand. So, but all of that has self-corrected itself, and we're doing much better.
Yeah, of course, I've only heard good things about the program in my district, which is the UCLA area. I'm wondering, as you put them in other places, are you picking the next most likely to succeed areas? Or are you just picking a random geographic area in Hollywood? Because I would think, I don't know, shopping centers, subway stops, downtown where there's a lot of density. I mean, there might be a number of areas that you'd consider as the next most likely to succeed. And I don't know whether it would make sense to take those, or are you just picking an area because it's somewhere between USC and UCLA and just trying to see geographically how it works?
Hollywood has a lot of those components you mentioned, council members, so it made a natural choice to make, but we're also looked at other programs. The department had received grants on the Mobility Hub program. So the Mobility Hub program, the first and last mile, has a car sharing component within for the downtown area. We're working with City of Long Beach to get to receive some additional grants, and there will be other areas as well. So the department as a whole is looking at that. And again, I think Hollywood, number one, had the interest. Number two, Zipcar thought that would make the best sense. The department thought it has the density, the businesses, the commercial, the nightlife, had all of those other factors as well as a good test base for the next phase, which then gives us really a lot of better tools to put in if we decide to do a competitive bid, or if we decide to do a full-on car sharing program. Then we've tested it from different perspectives.
Great, thank you.
I'm not real familiar with the Zipcar. Can you just describe how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. The Zipcar itself, it's really a self-service operation. You go online, you sign up. We do a driver's license check. That's really kind of the gate. So if you have a very poor driving record, it's likely you won't be approved, because when you sign up as a member and you use the vehicle, we pay for your insurance and we pay for your gas. So it's that insurance element that comes into play in the beginning. Once you're approved as a member, you get a Zip card. It looks just like this. This is actually what opens the vehicle. In the upper, well, let me just put it above the steering wheel on the windshield, there's a modem, just like a wireless modem, like a cell phone. Once you've made your reservation online, this actually will open the car. Inside the car is a key. Because you've activated this, the key will start, and you're on your way. And we're able to track, mileage, things like that, where you've gone. And as long as you return the car based on the time parameters that you selected in your reservation, everything's great. If it needs gas, you use our gas card. In cities outside of LA, for example, in Vancouver, we work with the city on parking permits. So Zip cars are allowed in downtown corridors. It's really unlimited. I mean, we're just in that nascent stage here.
And the targeting of universities, the reason for that?
I'm sorry?
The targeting of universities, what?
Universities are just one kind of element of the organization.
I would think like hospitals would be.
We are in hospitals. Okay. We do work with hospitals in the United States and in most of our markets.
Cool. Great. Can I get more information about it?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We'll provide more information.
Cool. Any other questions, anybody? No, I'm ready to move forward with this. Thank you for
Sure, thank
the
you.
update and where we're at. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Did city staffers, anybody want to speak from Eric's office? Okay, come on. All right. Here you go. Any other new business? Anybody else has anything they want to bring before us? Have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.